the Gold and Alternative Investments show. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and we're here to bring you really exciting people that I talk to that can expand your mind, that can get you thinking again, that can get you out of just sitting down and watching Netflix, which I all call broke flicks. And I'm really excited today because I am speaking to somebody I've known for many, many years. His name is Ron Manners. Now, Ron is an Australian businessman. He's got a fascinating background. He was actually born in Kalgoorlie. For those of you that don't know, Kalgoorlie is in Western Australia. And right now during COVID, they're all locked away, and I think they're quite happy with that. But he was also the founder and the chairman of Croesus Mining. Now, Croesus Mining at one point was I think it was Australia's third largest gold producer. I know Ron's going to correct me if I'm wrong. He's currently the executive chairman of Mannwest Group and the founder and executive director of the Mannkal Economic Education Foundation. That's an Australian free market think tank, and we're going to get into more of that as we get into the conversation with Ron. Now, he's also done a lot of work with the Australians for the Northern Development and Economic Vision, a lobby group, which is chaired by its co-founder, Gina Rinehart. And his contribution to the mining industry not only earned him an induction into the Australian Mining Hall of Fame, as well as a Legends in Mining, and more recently, he was awarded an AO in the General Division of the Order of Australia. We're going to talk to that as well, but you know, some of the things you might not know. And here's something for all of you to have a think about. And Ron, no blushing on your part, but Ron was involved in a serious car accident when he was 17. And when I say serious, and again, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 3 years in hospital, numerous operations. He only managed to finish one subject out of all the subjects in high school, but it didn't stop him. You know what? This man has done more for Australia and getting people thinking, and more for the students of the Mannkal Economic Foundation than most people I know. He is still full of energy. Ron Manners, welcome to the show.
Kerry, I have no chance of matching your expectations.
Ron, I know you do, because I'm just going to put this up for the moment. Ron's also written a number of books, and this one is The Lonely Libertarian. Lonely Libertarian, turning ideas into gold and gold into ideas, because Ron, you've had such a great background in the gold industry, and of course precious metals, gold in particular during volatile times is often spoken about. And just before we came on, you were telling me that Australia didn't have a gold industry. Tell me about what you were just saying about our gold industry.
Yeah, Kerry, to me this is interesting, that we've got an iron ore industry and we've got a gold industry, and they're two of the key pillars on which Australia's prosperity is built. It's what pays for all the schools, all the health, they're two of Australia's greatest industries. Now there are other industries, I know, but if you look at the iron ore industry, it was, thanks to Leng, it was illegal to export iron ore until Lang Hancock tackled the federal government and proved that it was a complete nonsense that Australia had a shortage of iron ore, and they should remove this obstacle to us just getting on with the job. It was illegal. You could not get a permit because it was iron ore was regarded as a strategic mineral because we had such a shortage. And we got thousands and thousands of years of reserves to feed the world with iron ore. What a nonsense that we were prevented from getting on with the job. The gold, and people they think we've had an iron ore industry forever. And again, similarly with gold. Gold really put Western Australia in particular on the map. It put Victoria on the map 50 years before, but it put Western Australia on the map back in 1895 right through to about 1904, and then it was gradually in decline. But the industry was virtually wiped out by two things that the governments did. And again, I find very few people who have any memory of this. The two things, the government is very good at killing people by sending us away to war. It's very good at taxing us to death, so we've got nothing left over to feed ourselves with. The third thing it's very good at is closing down industries. Now, we know more recently the government, for various regulations and appeasement to unions, have killed our automotive, our car industry. But the government killed the gold mining industry by doing two things. It fixed the price of gold at $35 for about 30 years. If you want to fix the price of something at a price below the cost of production, you've just about killed it. Now, if there were any doubt about whether they were successfully killing the industry, they then came on and made it illegal for anyone to own gold.
That's right.
Early 70s, if you were caught with gold in your possession, you go to jail. If you had gold, you could only sell it to licensed gold buyers. They were the 4 banks. They had a little sign on the front saying, licensed gold buyer, and they could buy gold from you so you could get it out of your possession. Government seized confiscated the gold in USA, everywhere, back at about 1933.
Yeah.
They seized. Governments hate gold because it competes with the government printed money. And they'll always hate gold because it represents a discipline. However, these two things happened in the 70s. They made it legal to own gold, and they floated the price of gold. They got out of the way to let gold find its true price. The minute this started happening, a few of us veterans left over from the nickel boom, we saw this happening, and there were not a lot of us, but we all, in our own way, we didn't work all together. We worked in our own private ways to say, what can we do to be part of this gold renaissance, this revival of the gold industry? And there's only one book that covers that wonderful period of the late 70s through the 80s. It's Sandra Close has written a wonderful book called, I think, The Great Gold Renaissance. I think it's something like that. And she covers all the characters that came out of the woodwork and were part of this rebuilding of the gold industry. And now it's a thriving business. We've got all the international companies around the world producing gold in Australia, and it's big business. But to be part of that small group, to be part of the reawakening of a wonderful gold industry, was the most exciting thing of my whole life. And I'm so grateful to have been part of that experience of seeing it come back. So what's special about gold?
Ron, let me stop you. Let me stop you for a second.
And I got to tell you why it's so exciting. It's the only mineral that I know of where you can go, you can prospect for it, you can go and discover it, you can produce, you can create your own mine, you produce gold, and you can refine it. You can produce it, and you can produce your own gold bars yourself. It's totally integrated. You can do it all the way. All the others, you're relying on a huge capital expenditure and huge refineries. You're relying on other people to take it to the next step. Gold, you can take it right through. And then when you pour your own gold bar, you can do your own marketing. Remarkable. So you can follow your vision, follow your dreams right through to the end process. And that's what makes gold so exciting. So that's...
But Ron, I want to take you back to those early days when you say that, governments tax everything. And gold was fixed. Then they seized all the gold, right? And then we go into the 70s.
Sure,
take me back.
Confiscated it,
yeah, take me back to the 1970s. And what was... And you got involved in the gold mining scene at that point. What were you doing just before then? And how did that come about? And what was the mood like? Did you have to raise money? Take us back to that time.
I guess I was left over from the nickel boom, the nickel, again, it was interesting being part of a new industry. There was no nickel industry. There was a discovery by Western Mining Corporation at Kambalda. And then a lot of us then said, well, if they can do it, we can do it too. So we went out and did our best. I was a very active prospector, and I had some success.
Oh dear, we seem to have lost Ron. For some reason, he's frozen. So while Ron's frozen, we'll see whether or not Ron comes back. But that's what happens, I guess, when you're living in Kalgoorlie. Let's hope he comes back. He's still frozen. And I might have to do something about that. But anyway, I'm just gonna go back and tell you that he's written a number of books. Ron, let me stop you. Sorry, you totally froze. And I was just doing some fill in there. You totally froze just when we said take us back to that time. So let's start from there.
Right back to I was a part of the nickel exploration, nickel prospecting industry, and I developed many properties. I joint ventured so many with the bigger companies, and that was pretty exciting. I think I got penalised by the tax department, who didn't have a clear understanding of the Tax Act at that time, and they were trying to tax me on some shares that hit a very high price at June 30 in that particular year. Now, I couldn't sell the shares because they were what they call escrow. They were locked up as vendor shares are. I couldn't sell them till probably a couple of years later. And they were taxed at $8.80 per share. I eventually got to sell them at 15 cents per share.
Oh my goodness.
I was busily explaining to the taxation department that I couldn't pay tax on that high price because I didn't get that price. And they said, well, that's your problem. It's not their problem. And I think I really left Australia. I was really working out of Australia for about 7 years. Working for a merchant bank, running a hotel in Bali, doing all the remarkable things. I think after that 7 years, from a distance, I could see the gold mining industry reawakening, and I felt that I got to be part of that. So I did a deal with the tax department, and I'd been sending them poems. I couldn't send them money. I've been sending them poems every month. So just to maintain a friendly relationship with them. So I wrote and said, listen, you're not getting anything from me. Please let me come back into the workforce. You'll be able to tax me because I'll be successful. And they wrote back a simple little letter saying, okay, we'll tear up your files, get back to work, and away we went. So I came back, and then I was part of the gold mining rekindling of that wonderful industry. So that's I was ready to come back anyway. My kids were wondering where I was, and they at school they were asked, what does your father do? And they didn't know. So I was happy to come back and be a productive little taxpayer ever since.
And so when was that, Ron? Was that 1982? Is that right?
I came back about 1978.
Okay. Yep. So away for 7 years, running hotels in Bali, doing whatever, because the tax man basically wanted to tax you on a share which was in escrow. And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know what that is, it just means you can't do anything with it. It's locked up. So the tax man said, we're going to tax you on $8.80 a share, when actually you didn't get any money for them. They were just paper. And then when you eventually sold them, you sold them at 15 cents. So it was a complete nonsense anyway.
Yeah. I eventually sold them when the nickel boom was all over. I mean, that was the first chance I had of selling them. So I probably did a few more drill holes.
So again, tell us about the as you say, that the gold industry it wasn't around. Nothing was really happening. So we had the gold rush of the late 1800s, mainly in Victoria, a little bit in Western Australia, and then of course everything went quiet because they fixed the gold price and no one could own gold. They seized the gold. What
a way to kill an industry.
Many ways to kill an industry, but that's a pretty good one. So what was the catalyst for the gold industry renaissance, if you like, was the fact that they said, well, first of all, you can own gold, you can prospect for it, you can mine for it, and you can sell it.
Yeah,
So
simple as that.
what was your first foray when you got back to Australia? What into the gold industry?
Uh, I, my dad had taken me during the non-gold areas. There'd been a series of seminars in Kalgoorlie called Roaming for Gold, How to Search for Gold, run by old-time prospectors, and they used to run these every weekend. And we used to go to these courses, and Dad used to say, one day, and he said, there's plenty of gold around Kalgoorlie. One day we'll be able to go and look for it and do something about it. So I went with him at these seminars. So I felt that I had some very basic knowledge of what to look for. And I think that helped. But then we decided to get into an industry. You started looking at the wonderful records that had been kept by the mines department. There were volumes of cancelled gold mining leases on which the earlier production had been shown, and the earlier gold mining leases had been cancelled because they just expired over time. And you started looking at these old records, where the gold had been found, how many ounces they'd produced from a particular shaft. And you went to the mines department. If you found that ground was available, you could go and peg it yourself. You could go and continue the work that the old timers had started. So it was an interesting, methodical way. I remember I took the kids out for weekends in the bush, and we did soil sampling and put little flags. And they thought it was a game, but it was serious. And then after you did your soil sampling, you came back next weekend with all the assay results you found. You could, and they come out with the next weekend with an 8-ton truck. You could take a truckload of it back to the state battery, put it through the battery, and then you had to wait. And they produced a really miniature bar of gold from the truckload. And the kids were fascinated. All that big truck full of stuff. 8-ton truck was a big truck in those days. All that stuff
So
from
that
the truck,
little,
you produced a little miniature bar of gold, and I've still got the first bar of gold we poured as a result of that, and
wow,
for sentimental reasons.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
one thing led to another. Then I got involved with a series of about three or four different public companies that had been sort of left over from the nickel days, and we found that if we could clean up some of these companies, you could go to London, you could raise $100,000, you could come back and drill a series of holes, you could get some success, then you could move on and raise some more funds for exploration. So it was a bit by bit, and then after about 5 or 6 years of that, Keith Parry from Western Mining came into my office one day and he said, Ron, you've got to stop doing what you're doing. You're just producing, you're developing these projects, and you're getting joint ventures with all these companies. At some stage, you've got to stop doing that and float your very own public company and take your projects through to production. And he said, and then you could be another Western Mining, by getting the right people and continuing on, but not handing it over to joint venture partners or not relying on other people. Just take it right through to production. I think that's what Croesus Mining was, and we only raised just over $2 million. We were the only company that listed in 1986, the only company in the year that listed.
Wow.
Things were pretty tough, and we just listed. We got some English investors in. Then I think the Australian government devalued the Australian dollar by 17% or something or other. I had all the English investors saying, hey, we've just invested in your money, in your company. You haven't even listed yet, and we've lost 17% already because of your Australian dollar devaluation. I had to work harder than ever to cover the position for them and to get them. But we were in gold production. We were in production within 9 months of actually listing, and pretty much for the 20-year, my 20-year involvement with Croesus Mining, pretty much all that time we were producing. We paid about 11 dividends, and we generated all our own capital with which we continued our exploration and production activities. So I think the important thing is to get into production early.
Well, Ron, 9 months is awfully quick from sort of listing to get into production. That's pretty quick.
We,
What,
we
what,
were desperate. We were running out of money. We had to get to be a producer in a hurry.
so why does that not happen these days? I mean, you know, I'm sure there's some people around that would, and especially shareholders that would like to see it. Do you think, is it red tape, or is it harder to find?
Kerry, I can be completely honest now because I have no public role. I have nobody disciplining me in what I say. But I was really chased out of Kalgoorlie by the Native Title Act. And that made things so difficult toward the end in Croesus Mining's time there. We had 8 competing native title claims on the same ground, and we just couldn't get into production on several sources of ore that we had for our mill. It was frustrating. And at that point, I was happy to receive a takeover bid from a Canadian company called Eldorado Gold. They were not taking Croesus over so much for the ground that we had there. They were quite aware of the native title complexity. They wanted our team, and they wanted us all to go to Indonesia and explore in Indonesia, because we had a wonderful team of explorers and production people. And they put me on the Eldorado board, and I was happy to be a director. And we were busily mining for Eldorado in Mexico, Chile, Turkey, and Brazil. So it was a very interesting next few years for me as a director of Eldorado, exploring and producing in other parts of the world. So the time was right, but it was really the Native Title Act, and it was the complexity of the legalities. I had many Aboriginal partners in my right through the nickel boom and through gold, and they were as concerned as I was that the Native Title Act was breaking that wonderful relationship we had as joint venture partners and working together with the Aboriginal people of the area who have skills that we don't have. They could identify the rocks. Our geologists had to look through them with little microscopic eyeglasses. The Aborigines could walk past and they could see that with their perfect eyesight. They could see that within 2 or 3 meters. And it was really an education for me working with so many of those Aborigines that I learned to respect so much. And they've been frozen out of the act now, because they've been frozen out of the action, I should say now, because they have the skills, but the skills are not what the Native Title Act really gives the prizes to the people who can get in the way and can impede progress on a regular basis.
And who are those people, Ron?
It's really the legal advisors to what I call the Aboriginal industry, opposed to the Aboriginal people themselves.
Wow. Okay.
They're quite different. The Aboriginal industry is not the Aboriginal people. And I'm happy to go on record as that, because it's not. I went to school with so many Aborigines. I had so many Aboriginal friends, and they're great people. But the people that, what I call the do-gooders, usually live in the cities. They probably never met an Aboriginal. They don't realise how they're crippling the future of these wonderful people by erecting all these barriers and introducing this victimhood culture, which is pervading the next generation, where we spend all our time apologising. I don't think any of us need to apologise for creating opportunity, and that's what Western civilization has done for Australia.
I understand what you're saying, Ron, but I think there were some fairly nasty things with, you know, children being taken away, and there were some wrongs done to the Aboriginal people.
Oh, and Kerry, very badly done in many cases. But in some of these cases that I've got some people who have emerged now as Aboriginal leaders, and he was, I won't mention his name without his permission, but he was interviewed by the Swiss National TV with me in Kalgoorlie on when they did a TV documentary, and they were expecting to see all sorts of fireworks between us. And they were very disappointed because we agreed on almost every point. and I think one of the questions asked of him was, how does he feel about being one of the stolen generation, which was the term of the time? Yeah. And he put his head back and laughed uproariously. He said, I wasn't stolen, I was rescued. And I think at that point we shook hands on the TV, and that was the end of the interview.
It's really interesting to hear what you said before, that there's a difference between the Aboriginal industry and the Aboriginal people, and that right now we're not doing the people any good by putting all this red tape and native title acts, and that's why you had to walk away, and as a result probably a lot of damage for the Australian economy, because you're making money for a company that's doing all of their exploring and producing offshore.
Yeah, and then a few years later, I remember going to, that annual gold conference called Mines and Money in Hong Kong, and I walked around. I took some statistic at that time. I walked around to all the Australian companies who had little booths at the Mines and Money. This was probably 1996. I think it was about that date. I used to go every year. And I found that of all those Australian companies, they were spending 80% of their exploration budget out of Australia.
80%?
In the various former Soviet Union countries, in Africa and in Southern America. Mm. And all for the same reason. They just couldn't get on the ground in Australia.
Is that the same case today, Ron?
It's pretty much, if we averaged our age, you and I, and we went and pegged a piece of ground around Kalgoorlie in particular, because that's got very complex native title connotations there. If we pegged some ground there, we may not live long enough to actually drill a hole, to get the approvals to drill a hole.
But there seems to be a lot of news flow at the moment from various companies that are taking, like in the Pilbara. Let's have a look at De Grey Mining and their Hemi discovery, and Kairos with their projects.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of this ground is traditionally held. Like if they've got good title, a lot of the Pilbara ground is not subject to the Mines Department Act. A lot of it's covered under what they call state agreements, which override the Mining Act, and they're exempt from the native title.
But there's also plenty going on around Kalgoorlie as well, isn't there? And that is native title.
Yeah, but it's not new ground being acquired by people going out and pegging and going through the process of going through this. It's probably ground that they've picked up from companies who are leaving. They buy it, or it's a continuing title. Sometimes these are, they have gone through the long and tedious process from being an exploration license to a prospecting license to a mining lease. And once that's been granted, that's good title. And you don't have to keep going back and seeking approvals. It's like buying a house. Big difference between having a house that's leasehold or freehold.
Right.
If you've got freehold title, you've got proper title to it, and nobody can come and bring in new regulation and new requirements for you to comply. You're living under a different set of regulations, which we understand, and they don't change. So there is a big difference.
You're not going to believe this, but we are running out of time, and there's so much more I want to talk to you about. I want to ask you what you mean by being consciously aware. was one of the
Uh,
terms in your book. You said people are no longer consciously aware.
okay, I think that might have been several people have said hold the book up again, Kerry, because you've got a photo of me surrounded by a group of wonderful, about 30 or so young people, and they're
Yes.
saying, Ron, you call yourself a lonely libertarian. How could you be lonely surrounded by all these people? Well, if they know what I mean when I say being lonely, each of those people will understand, because we've helped them become consciously aware of what they really believe in, and and once you adopt a set of principles on which you build your career, a set of principles that you can transfer from your business career to your personal career and into your home life. Once you get a consistency of philosophies like that, you start feeling lonely, completely lonely, because you're almost an alien when you look at the evening news and all the bad news and all the stuff that seems to appeal to everybody else. You look at the front page of the newspaper and there's nothing of interest to you, so you start feeling lonely. And libertarians like to seek each other out because they have experienced that sense of extreme loneliness. And I think that really, to me, is becoming consciously aware. And that's probably why I'm spending so much time answering lessons from our Mannkal scholars. We send them away on, we've sent about 2,000 young Western Australian, very bright young people to leadership development opportunities around the world. Usually this involves about 3 months visiting certain parts of the world and learning what they're doing in other parts of the world so they can bring those ideas back with them. In many cases, the students find a position there, we've lost them. They go and work on a continuing basis for some of these overseas people. We had somebody in the office this morning who just come back from 2 years in England, where he found a position, and he's now the Australian representative for an open source software UK company, but now based in Perth, working remotely. And this is all, these people
It's the brain
are
drain.
always asking me, they're asking me questions, and I'll send you a link to something I've just done. Two of them asked me the same question quite independently in the 1 week. So I've put together a little article to sort of kind of cover. One is, how can we defend capitalism or free market free enterprise when we see so many bad examples in the corporate world of bad behaviour? And I've tried to point out that that's not free enterprise. That's not competitive free enterprise. That's corporate capitalism, which is a totally different thing. And you've got to separate those things. There's now three views of our future. It's not free enterprise versus socialism. The third view is being sponsored by people like the American Roundtable in Business and a lot of the big corporate capitalists in Australia, where they seek another brand, not free market competitive capitalism, but they seek a capitalism with government involvement, with a view to keeping out further competition. Big business does not like competition. Little business loves competition, because the more people you can have gathered together, and this is why Hungry Jack's and McDonald's and Kentucky Chicken always group together. Competition doubles the size of the market. They understand what competition really does. But the minute the big competitions say, no, if we can stop anyone from competing with us, we'll have the market to ourselves, we can jack the price up and behave badly. Well, they can only get away with it until we start asking questions. But I think these 2,000 young people we've got, they're going to start asking questions of government bad behaviour, big business bad behaviour. And I think then we'll see some discipline brought back into the marketplace.
I was going to ask if you saw the discipline before we did. What made you start the Mannkal Economic Foundation? What was the basis for doing that? you frustrated with the way that big business was going and red tape, or what was?
Well, I guess a lot of people had asked me when you get to my age, Kerry, they ask you funny questions like, what's made all the difference in your life? What are the three things that have made all the difference in your life? It's a typical sort of hypothetical questions, but I like to answer these questions. And I look back and I said, just three things. One, how I accidentally got involved in economics when I was age 16. And then I accidentally got involved in philosophy when I was about 20. And then the Duke of Edinburgh, I got selected in 1968 for the Duke of Edinburgh Study Conference, which was set up by Prince Philip because he wanted to do more than just walk 10 paces behind the Queen. A pretty smart fellow, and he set up this thing where he brought 100 people from industry together with 100 people from the government and 100 people from the trade union movement. Every 4 years, he gathered 300 of us together in that mix. Then he broke us up into little groups of 10, 3 of each of us, plus a full-time secretary, and he sends it out to different parts of the world to ask questions. He personally taught us how to ask questions. And that's for another session.
Yes.
And then, but people kept asking me, what were the three things? And these are the three things that made all the difference to me. And then I thought, if we could combine the experience of it in economics and the experience in philosophy with the strategic importance of Prince Philip's lessons to me into a Mannkal style of training young people and just send them out to bring back ideas, then we might have the same effect on them as he had on me. And I had no idea we would have started such a thing. We got now 2,000 of them. They formed a Mannkal alumni group. They all talk to one another. Many of them have not met each other because they went on different years, and they keep getting in touch with us, and they want to come back and give little seminars to the incoming students. And it is
like a family.
Satisfying. It's an incredible experience to see it, the self-fulfilling thing. And we've got a good, strong budget. We can send about 300 of these a year now. And we've got a great staff who spend a lot of time interviewing. We're interviewing people now for next year's trips, which we've got all arranged already.
So if you're interviewing now, what do people need to do if they want to be a part of what you're doing?
They just go to the mannkal.org, O-R-G, mannkal.org. That's MANNKAL.org website, and look for student opportunities.
And how long is that open for?
All the time.
Okay, so they can do that anytime they like.
Yeah, they can put their name on the list, and then they can start attending. We have weekly seminars, normally in the office, but during this lockdown period, we've been running. It's all online, using mainly Zoom, but because this lockdown has affected every country, our staff, I've encouraged our staff to ring the top economists in the world. People who normally would not even answer your question, they wouldn't answer the phone number, they're so busy. We eventually get through to them. When we speak to them, they're locked down, bored out of their dear brains in their isolation. And they say, yes, they'd love to do a webinar for us. And they put an incredible amount of preparation into it. And we've got them online now. Every week we have the seminar with top economists from all around the world. And our team watch and they ask questions. And the speakers always come back to us and say, my gosh, we're impressed at the style of questions being asked by your Perth students. Well, I think
that's fantastic, Ron. I mean, I think you've done an amazing job. And I mentioned
it's an It's an opportunity. When this is all over, we'll start ringing them again next year and they'll be too busy to talk to us.
Well, make the most of it. I say to people, where out of every crisis, look for an opportunity. There's the opportunity. Can I ask you two more things?
We've got it.
Before we go, Ron, I want to ask you two more things. And, I am putting him on the spot, ladies and gentlemen. I did not give him these questions in advance. They are the first one I want to ask you about Northern Australia and whether that's going to be the next powerhouse because of your association with ANDEV. And I also want to talk to you about, you said in the book, let's talk about money and why you say parents and schools are not much good at teaching the young about money. So let's start with Northern Australia, because over 90% of people live on the coast. Everything's very expensive in real estate on the coast. We've got a very large landmass, but not a lot of it is occupied. Do you think Northern Australia could become the next powerhouse within Australia? Or is there just too much red tape once again?
No, I think Northern Australia is what Americans used to look and call it the West. Like the opportunities to all the Americans that originally settled on the East Coast. The West was opportunity. To Australia, the Northern Australia is the land of opportunity. Everything is bigger up there. The ore bodies are bigger. The rivers are bigger. The weather conditions are totally different to the rest of Australia, and it's completely counter-cyclical with the weather conditions in the southern part of Australia. It is the land of opportunities. Somehow we've got to attract people to actually go there. It's like I say to the average Australian that I meet in the capital cities, I said, have you ever seen a mine site? They've never seen a mine. We should be giving thanks to every mine site in Australia for creating the conditions, this wonderful prosperity that we have in Australia, but we've never seen one. How few people have ever been to the Pilbara or been to the Kimberleys or been up in the north of Northern Territory or the Gove? These are big opportunities. The people that go there should go there for a few years. The opportunities to double your salary, for instance, exists not down in the south in this comfortable little zones by the ocean and by the coffee lounges. It's up in the north. They should go and get this, spend 5 years and go and get opportunities. They'll come back and they'll be able to pay cash for the home instead of signing up for some lifetime home loan situation. But it's the opportunity. We're not telling them enough about what the hell's going on up there. It's a fabulous story. Every time I go up there, I keep coming back as though I've just discovered a new country. Well, the Ron, opportunities are enormous.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, Ron, because we are running out of time this time, can I come back and can we do a program just about Northern Australia and the opportunities? Because
sure,
if there are great opportunities up there, let's get it out there, because I agree, people aren't talking about it enough. So,
and we're coming up for a period where the universities are producing graduates. There'll be no jobs for them. Even the students, many of the students at universities think it's like the old times where they come off from graduation days. They think the Ernst EYs of the world and the big legal firms will all be standing in a line ready to seize them. Not anymore. Not anymore. These people have got to say they've got to go work for themselves. They've got to create a portfolio career for themselves so they can spend a day working on somebody's board and a day on a startup and a day developing something else, and then spending 1 day a week doing something for themselves to get this independence, get this sense of independence, develop the germ of an idea and keep that heartbeat of that idea alive and develop, and that'll blossom. And these are called opportunities. This is, to to survive the next few years, you've got to have that little sense of independence beating away in there, and don't let it ever go to sleep, because you'll just join the masses looking, and they'll complain. They'll just become like a part of the whinging fraternity. They'll end up marching.
Ron Manners, you know, before, when I asked if you had time to speak to me, you said, I don't know what we're going to talk about for 45 minutes. Well, it's been an hour. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. And you are an extraordinary person who gives so much to so others. You're very, very humble. You always say to me, oh no, it's nothing to do with me. It's all these other wonderful people I have around you. Well, I'd like to say
Kerry,
one thing.
I got to cut in on you. I feel so much better for having spoken with you for the hour.
God bless you, Ron. I'm going to leave with one thing, Ron Manners, and that is this. Ladies and gentlemen, one of Australia's most recent award, the Queen's Honours Awards list, and AO, Ron Manners, AO. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
A pleasure too, Kerry. See you soon.